Halo, halo, czy nas słyszycie? To nasz ostatni komunikat. Dziś oddziały niemieckie wkroczyły do Warszawy. Braterskie pozdrowienie przesyłamy żołnierzom polskim walczącym na Helu i wszystkim walczącym gdziekolwiek się jeszcze znajdują. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła. Niech żyje Polska!
Decades have passed since that fateful day when German troops entered Warsaw. Poland has indeed not perished. Instead, it has thrived, maintaining its identity and sovereignty against all odds. Today, it once again stands as a beacon of hope and resistance in the face of aggression, not just for its citizens, but for its neighbors in Europe as well. This is the story of one of Europe's most enduring rivalries, as well as Poland's struggle for survival and possibly a look into the future of what may happen if Russia isn't stopped in Ukraine. Poland, a country lodged in the heart of Central Europe, which sits on the northern European plain, has historically been endowed with formidable strength and has been made a perennial target for invasions. Poland has a predominantly flat terrain which extends from France to Russia. During the era when cavalry was the dominant form of warfare, this terrain was a strategic advantage for Poland. The flat landscape allowed for the rapid movement of cavalry forces and facilitated quick and decisive engagements. Poland's famed winged hussars were able to exploit this terrain to great effect, achieving several notable victories in battle. However, the advent of gunpowder and the evolution of warfare drastically changed the battlefield. With the rise of guns and artillery, the flat and open plains that were once Poland's strength began to serve as a disadvantage. The plains become a highway for invading armies, providing them with easy access into the heart of the country. Poland's geographic vulnerability has been reflected in its history, from its powerful rise as an empire during the centuries of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to the spread of gunpowder and Poland's eventual disintegration. Poland's struggle with Russia effectively began with its inception as a state. Historical records referring to the Polish state begin with the rule of Duke Mieszko I, whose reign commenced sometime before 963 and continued until his death in 992. Mieszko converted to Christianity in 966, following his marriage to Princess Dubravka of Bohemia, a fervent Christian. The event is known as the Baptism of Poland, and its date is often used to mark a symbolic beginning of Polish statehood and its alignment with Rome and Catholicism. On the other hand, the precursor to modern Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine was known as Kievan Rus, which was a federation of Slavic tribes under the rule of the Varangians, Scandinavian warriors and merchants, in the late 9th century. The start of hostilities can be traced back to 981. Under the rule of Grand Prince Vladimir the Great, Kievan Rus embarked upon a series of military campaigns to expand their sphere of influence. The region of Cherven cities, a chain of fortified towns on the border of Poland, was one such target. This historical moment served as a wake-up call, leading to the increased fortification of the duchy and a more defensive strategy towards the east, setting the stage for a long and tumultuous relationship between the two nations. Additionally, Kievan Rus converted to Orthodox Christianity in 988, expanding the cultural gap between the two states. In the 13th century, the Mongols initiated a sweeping invasion of Eastern Europe. Despite Poland not falling under prolonged Mongol domination, they inflicted considerable damage on the Polish lands, causing political instability and disrupting trade and agriculture. The disruption caused by Mongol invasion contributed to a period of political decentralization within the Polish territories. Local rulers and nobility gained greater autonomy and power, which would later influence the development of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The Mongol incursions also resulted in the fragmentation of Kievan Rus into smaller principalities, each governed with differing levels of autonomy under Mongol suzerainty. Among these principalities, Moscow emerged as a prominent entity. The common threats faced by both the Principality of Muscovy and the Kingdom of Poland temporarily aligned the interests of the two entities and led to opportunities for diplomatic cooperation and alliances. In the shadow of Mongol rule, Moscow had become a tax collector of sorts for the Mongols. This role allowed Moscow to consolidate power and amass wealth, which they used to strengthen their position within Rus. And thus, the former Rus lands under Moscow grew to a formidable power in the east, which increasingly vied for the domination of Eastern and Northern Europe. Beginning with Muscovite-Lithuanian wars, spanning from 1368 to 1522, primarily fought over territorial disputes and control of former principalities of the Kievan Rus. It marked the first significant instance where Lithuania strategically allied with Poland and stood against Moscow. These wars played a significant role in shaping the political landscape of Europe, culminating in the formation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569, an alliance which was largely created to consolidate the military resources of Poland and Lithuania, forming a stronger front. Meanwhile, from 1558 to 1583, the Livonian War started a new era of historical rivalry between Poland and Russia, triggered by Ivan the Terrible, who sought to expand Russia's territories on the Baltic Sea. His primary aim was to control trade routes and further consolidate his power. In the initial stages of the war, Russian forces made significant advances into Livonian territories, present-day Latvia and Estonia. However, the tide of the war began to shift in 1561 when Poland and Lithuania formally entered the war against Russia. While a formidable military power at the time, its involvement effectively halted Russia's expansionist campaign. The Livonian War ended in 1583, where Russia conceded most of its gains in Livonia. The war's outcome was a significant setback for Russia and a triumph for Poland, as it effectively checked Russian expansion and solidified the creation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth's position as a major power in Eastern Europe. The Livonian War established a pattern of mutual mistrust and competition that has characterized Polish-Russian relations for centuries up to present day. The late 16th and early 17th centuries were marked by political instability and power vacuums in Muscovite Russia due to the time of troubles. In contrast, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was experiencing relative strength and expansion. The death of Tsar Fyodor I in 1598, the last of the Rurikid dynasty, set off a crisis of succession in Russia, leading to a series of pretenders claiming the throne, a situation that Poland sought to exploit. Polish forces initially supported false Dmitry I, but after his assassination in 1606, they switched their support to another pretender, false Dmitry II. The Polish army led by Hetman Stanislaw Żołkiewski even succeeded in capturing Moscow in 1610, placing the Polish prince Władysław on the Russian throne. This Polish domination was met with strong resentment from the Russian populace, especially due to religious differences, leading to a popular uprising in 1612 that expelled Polish forces from Moscow. The war dragged on for several more years, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The vast logistical challenges posed by governing a distant and geographically expansive territory, especially during harsh Russian winters, strained the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth's supply lines and communications. Fierce Russian resistance combined with Cossack uprisings and peasant revolts made the occupation increasingly untenable. The Polish-Muscovite War ended in 1618 with the Treaty of Diolino, which restored peace but left many issues unresolved. The treaty confirmed Poland's territorial gains in Western Russia, but failed to secure the Russian throne. For Russia, the conflict and the time of troubles led to the rise of the Romanov dynasty, marking the beginning of a new era in Russian history. And the Polish occupation of Moscow profoundly impacted the Russian consciousness, fostering a deep-seated mistrust and resentment towards Poland, a sentiment echoed in subsequent Russo-Polish relations. For Poland, the war marked the height of its expansionist ambitions. However, the failure to secure the Russian throne for Vladislav and the military expenditures of the war strained the Commonwealth's resources and contributed to its gradual decline in the following centuries. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was a shining beacon of federalism and noble democracy that was built on the principle of golden liberty, a system which conferred significant rights to the nobility. However, within this system lay a debilitating flaw that would prove to be the Commonwealth's downfall: the liberum veto, translated as free veto, a parliamentary mechanism that empowered any member of the Legislative Assembly to terminate a current session and nullify any decisions made therein. While the intent behind the liberum veto was to promote consensus and prevent the imposition of decisions by a majority, it ultimately became a tool for legislative gridlock. In essence, it allowed a single member to hold the entire Legislative Assembly hostage. As a result, the government began experiencing severe crisis of inefficiency. The Commonwealth's political system was increasingly paralyzed, rendering it incapable of passing essential laws, implementing reforms, or effectively managing its vast territories. It also became a tool of manipulation for foreign powers. By bribing or threatening a member, they could effectively sabotage the Commonwealth's decision-making process. This further exacerbated the internal crisis and paved the way for external invasions and the eventual partitioning of the Commonwealth. The period known as the Swedish Deluge, spanning from 1655 to 1660, would mark the beginning of Poland's downfall. The primary aggressors in this era were the Kingdom of Sweden, the Tsardom of Russia, the Ottoman Empire, and Brandenburg Prussia. The Swedish Deluge was initiated by the invasion of Charles X Gustav of Sweden. The early stages of this invasion were marked by Swedish victories, with vital territories including Warsaw and Krakow falling under their control. Simultaneously, the Tsardom of Russia, sensing an opportunity in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth's vulnerability, launched their own invasion, marking the beginning of the Russo-Polish War of 1654-1667, which overlapped with the Swedish invasion. The Russo-Polish War reached its conclusion with the Treaty of Andrusovo, which resulted in the division of Ukraine along the Dnieper River, creating a lasting divide between eastern and western Ukraine, a rather contentious issue in modern geopolitics. Overall, the Swedish Deluge, coupled with Russia's invasion, led to a drastic decrease in Poland's population by roughly a third due to war, famine, and disease. Despite the devastation, these events also highlighted the resilience of the Polish people. Their successful defense against the Swedish and Russian invasions showcased their courage and determination. As Russia's power and influence continued to grow, the Polish Commonwealth found itself in a contrasting situation marked by a gradual decline. Russia pursued a strategy of territorial expansion driven by an imperial ideology centered on the idea of reuniting the lands of the Rus. This ideology served as a rationale for Russia's efforts to annex regions that now comprise of modern-day Belarus and Ukraine. Meanwhile, to the west of Poland, the Kingdom of Prussia was emerging as a formidable military force, posing an additional threat to the Commonwealth's stability and territorial integrity. By the late 18th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had declined to such an extent politically that it had become incapable of mounting effective resistance against external pressures. In this weakened condition, the Commonwealth succumbed to the partitioning ambitions of Prussia, Russia, and Austria, leading to its eventual disintegration through 3 successive partitions. In the first partition of 1772, Prussia, Russia, and Austria collaboratively seized substantial portions of Polish territory, resulting in a significant reduction of Poland's land and resources. Then came the Polish-Russian War of 1792. The war was sparked by Russia's discontent with the Polish constitution, which aimed to strengthen the sovereignty of Poland and reduce foreign influence. The Russian Empire, fearing the rise of a powerful Polish state, invaded the Commonwealth. Despite mounting a strong resistance, the Polish were defeated. This led to the second partition of Poland, drastically reducing the country's size. The final blow came in the form of the third partition of Poland in 1795, when Prussia, Russia, and Austria effectively eradicated Poland as an independent nation-state, each seizing considerable chunks of its remaining territory. A novel justification for Russian colonialism emerged during this period, fueled by the portrayal of occupied Poland as a chaotic and threatening nation whose Catholic and democratic ideals needed suppression by their more enlightened neighbors. So Poland had been removed from the map of Europe, and the Polish people found themselves under the rule of foreign powers that sought not only to control their lands, but also to erase their cultural identity. Despite these oppressive circumstances, the Polish spirit of independence and cultural identity remained strong. Throughout the 19th century, Poles resisted their occupiers from clandestine educational activities aimed at preserving the Polish language to open rebellions against foreign rule. These were not mere revolts, but national insurrections that embraced wide segments of Polish society, driven by a deep seat of desire for freedom and a refusal to accept the erasure of Polish statehood and culture. These uprisings brutally suppressed, resulting in heavy casualties and further repressions, including mass deportations to Siberia. Polish people would have to wait for a better chance to regain their freedom, which came in the form of the Great War. By 1918, the empires that had previously divided Poland faced their own demise. The collapse of the German, Austrian, and Russian empires created a power vacuum amidst which independent Poland was reborn as a nation. In the tumultuous period following the Great War, Poland maneuvered to secure its independence by taking advantage of the Russian Civil War. As the Russian Empire disintegrated amidst the pressures of war, economic difficulties, and internal turmoil, it paved the way for a transformative era marked by the ascent of the Bolsheviks. At the helm of this movement was Vladimir Lenin, whose unwavering commitment to communism became the driving force behind the Bolshevik regime. In pursuit of his ambitious goal of assisting other communist movements and sparking a series of revolutions across Europe, Lenin identified newly independent Poland as a crucial strategic bridge. He saw Poland as a territory that his Red Army would need to cross to achieve his revolutionary ambitions. This, and Poland's eagerness and ambition to secure its newly established sovereignty and expand its borders, led to the Polish-Soviet War, which unfolded from 1919 to 1921. Polish forces moved into Ukraine in an attempt to regain their historical territories. However, this offensive was met with a counterattack by the Soviets, which pushed the Polish forces back all the way to Warsaw. The Battle of Warsaw, also known as the Miracle on the Vistula, was a decisive turning point. In August 1920, the Poles led by Józef Pilsudski successfully defended Warsaw and pushed the Red Army eastwards in a counteroffensive. As winter set in, both sides were exhausted and ready for peace. Negotiations began, leading to the Treaty of Riga in March 1921. The treaty recognized Poland's independence and agreed upon a new border, effectively ending the conflict. However, the terms of the treaty were seen by many Ukrainians and Belarusians as a betrayal, as they were incorporated into Soviet Russia instead of the intended federation within Poland. By the late 1930s, Adolf Hitler had risen to power in Germany, and his expansionist ambitions were becoming increasingly apparent. Poland and the Soviet Union remained in a state of tension. Poland was viewed as an enemy, and it was seen as a state created by the Allied powers during World War I, which both Germany and Russia resented. Joseph Stalin was concerned about a potential two-front invasion by Poland and Japan, while many people from the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic sought refuge in Poland due to the harsh policies of collectivization and the Holodomor under Stalin's rule. The Soviet Union supported communist groups in Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine, while Poland sent undercover agents to encourage resistance against Soviet rule. This led Stalin to associate Poles in the Soviet Union with nationalist and terrorist activities. So overall, this period of history was marked by a complex geopolitical rivalry and conflicts with both sides engaging in espionage and subversive activities. In 1939, these tensions culminated in a secret agreement known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This non-aggression pact contained a secret protocol that divided Central and Eastern Europe into spheres of influence between the Soviet Union and Germany. The repercussions of this agreement were immediate and tragic for Poland, as on September 1, 1939, Nazi Germany launched an invasion of Poland from the west, and on September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded from the east, effectively partitioning Poland between the two powers. This division marked the beginning of a dark period in the nation's history and the beginning of World War II. During the subsequent years of the war, the Soviet Union initiated a series of repressive actions against Polish citizens, culminating in the tragic Katyn massacre of 1940. This horrific event, ordered by Joseph Stalin himself, resulted in the execution of over 20,000 Polish officers and prisoners of war. The Soviet Union denied its involvement in the massacre for half a century, deepening the strain on Polish-Russian relations. The Warsaw Uprising, a daring act rebellion orchestrated by the Polish underground resistance in 1944, aimed to liberate Warsaw from the grasp of the German occupation. The backbone of this operation was the Polish Home Army, responsible for devising and executing this massive military effort. As the German forces started to retreat from Poland due to the relentless advancement of the Soviet army, the Polish Home Army seized the opportunity to incite a rebellion. Startlingly, evidence suggests that the Red Army did not provide reinforcements to the Polish resistance fighters. Declassified documents have even pointed to Joseph Stalin's tactical decision to halt the advance of Soviet forces, effectively allowing the operation to falter and the Polish resistance to be crushed, providing the Germans with a window of opportunity to regroup and retake the city. This pause allowed the Germans to suppress the Polish resistance and launch a savage retaliatory attack on the city. The Polish resistance endured for a remarkable 63 days with minimal external support. It was the most extensive military effort by any European resistance movement during World War II. The Polish resistance would also help the Soviet army to liberate other Polish cities from German occupation, and then the Soviets would reward the Polish with occupation. Casualties during the Warsaw Uprising were catastrophic. It is estimated that about 16,000 members of the Polish resistance were killed and about 6,000 were badly wounded. In addition, between 150 and 200,000 Polish civilians died, mostly from mass executions. Jews being harbored by Poles were exposed by German house-to-house clearances and mass evictions of entire neighborhoods. Overall, Poland suffered immensely during World War II, losing nearly 20% of its population, a higher percentage than any other sovereign state. The Holocaust claimed the lives of almost the entire Jewish population in Poland. The aftermath of World War II brought further significant changes to Poland's borders. As part of post-war settlements, Poland's boundaries were shifted several hundred kilometers to the west, resulting in a profound alteration of the country's physical and demographic geography. The Yalta Conference of 1945 solidified the division of Europe into spheres of influence, with Poland falling into the Soviet sphere. This led to a pro-Soviet government in Poland for the next 45 years and a loss of political autonomy, culminating in the establishment of a communist state loyal to Moscow. So the brutal Nazi occupation had ended, but a new era of Soviet dominance had begun. The political scene was one of the most dramatically affected areas under USSR rule. Rigged elections in 1947 brought the Polish Workers' Party to power, leading to a one-party system indicative of a totalitarian state. Any political opposition was suppressed, and many opposition leaders were either imprisoned or exiled. Soviet-style censorship was also prevalent, restricting freedom of speech and expression. The security apparatus, modeled on the Soviet KGB and known as the Ministry of Public Security, was notorious for its persecution of anti-communist elements and carried out mass arrests, torture, and executions. Socially, the USSR's influence was pervasive, with the Soviet model of education, culture, and propaganda being implemented. However, this period also saw significant resistance, as the Catholic Church, particularly under the leadership of Cardinal Stefan Wyszynski and Pope John Paul II, played a crucial role in maintaining national identity and resisting Soviet influence. Economically, Poland adopted the Soviet model of a centrally planned economy. Industries were nationalized and agriculture was attempted to be collectivized, although with limited success due to widespread resistance amongst peasants. Initially, these policies led to a period of rapid industrialization and growth. However, they also led to economic stagnation and inefficiency, causing significant hardship for the Polish people, especially during the economic crisis of the 1980s. The cumulative effects of political repression and social resistance and economic hardship led to widespread discontent amongst the Polish people. In the last days of 1989, as the world watched the Iron Curtain crumble, Poland emerged from the shadow of Soviet dominance, re-establishing itself as an independent nation on December 31st. The Round Table Talks had instigated a cascade of events that culminated in semi-free elections in June 1989. As the wind of change swept across Eastern Europe, Poland commenced its own metamorphosis, pivoting westwards in a shift that would redefine its geopolitical identity. The expansion of NATO in 1999, and later the EU in 2004, to include Poland, stoked Russian anxieties of encirclement and the encroachment of Western influence. The chasm between the two nations widened during the Chechen conflict, as Poland's decision to offer asylum to key Chechen figures was perceived by Russia as a direct interference in its domestic affairs. The Russia-Georgia conflict of 2008 served as a chilling reminder of the machinations within Putin's administration, shaking Poland's faith in its eastern neighbor. The Smolensk plane crash in 2010 claimed the lives of President Lech Kaczynski and many top officials. The flight was en route to a ceremony commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Katyn massacre. The investigation into the crash became a source of tension, with Poland criticizing Russia's lack of cooperation. Russia's expansionist behavior came into even sharper focus in 2014, with the annexation of Crimea and the subsequent backing of pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. Poland, in response, advocated for a permanent NATO military presence on its soil and condemned Russia's actions alongside its Western allies. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 served as a catalyst for Poland to expedite its military modernization plans. The aggressive rhetoric emanating from Russian political and cultural quarters, coupled with the historical baggage, underscores Poland's determination to resist any attempts to let history repeat itself. There are over 1,000 years of hard and brutal history between Poland and Russia. Ever since its inception as a unified state, Russia has been Poland's biggest rival, attempting to undermine its growth and contest its territories. Neither Poland nor Russia are entirely blameless in their endless struggle against each other. And now that we are witnessing Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, there is no question about what Poland must do. It must help protect its neighbors. It must end this brutal cycle of historical rivalry. Poland isn't just protecting Ukraine, but it's protecting itself. The historic precedent for its destruction is there, and it cannot let this history repeat itself. Russia's imperial ambitions must be stopped once and for all, for the sake of Poland and Europe. Next, we will discuss the support Poland has been providing to Ukraine and its military modernization efforts. This video will be uploaded in about a week from now, so click in the middle if it's available. And this is my Patreon map. Everyone on this map is a legend. Thank you all so much for your support. GeoPerspective, out.